Gather round, dads, it's time for a tale. Hand me a book and a warm pint of ale. Let's discuss writing and the literary gods with Dan Roberts on the Dadlit Pod.
Welcome to the Dadlit Pod, the literary podcast for Reza Pahlavi fans like me. and Matt Scott. I don't know if Matt Scott is a Reza Pahlavi fan, but we'll find out. Matt Scott is the author of Surviving the Lion's Den thriller trilogy, which debuted in 2021. Matt's latest action-packed thriller is the forthcoming The Ayatollah Takedown. His two previous novels include Surviving the Lion's Den and The Iranian Deception. According to Matt, Vince Flynn and Brad Thor kept him interested in the political spy genre, but he always wanted to do a story about Iran because so few Westerners know what it looks like on the inside. Matt grew up in Portsmouth, Virginia. He currently resides in Charlotte, North Carolina, with his wife, Amanda. And when he's not writing, Matt works as a financial analyst and an amateur golden retriever wrangler. Matt, welcome to the
Hello.
Dadlet Pod.
Thank you so much for having me. I guess I need to update my bio to also add a golf addict and pro wrestling nerd.
Oh, great. So I was looking back and proof positive that I will eventually get to everyone who reaches out. I think you engaged with me back in May of 2025, and
Yeah.
it only took 8 months.
Hey, authors are patient people. Hey, if you're an author, you have to be a patient person because
Oh man.
the way the publishing world works, you just grow accustomed to it. So,
Yes.
I'm thankful to get a spot in the show anytime I can get one.
Well, I'm thankful you waited for me and you didn't just say, the Dadlet Pod is never going to get back to me, et cetera, et
Nah,
cetera.
nah, nothing like that.
Yes. I'm excited to have you here because, of course, your three books, Surviving the Lion's Den, and let me get the second one, The Iranian Deception and The Ayatollah Takedown, all
Yeah.
focus on the nation of Iran during what I suppose would be considered the last 25 years.
Well, I mean, when I started surviving the lion's den, I mean, it does have its roots in the revolution,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of where part of the backstory begins. Most of the story takes place in modern day between the three novels, but I kind of bounce back and forth in Iranian history as I need to.
Yeah, what inspired you to write about the nation of Iran?
I just always felt like, it was a story that needed to be told because of the revolution and because, Iran and the West, especially the United States, have been at such odds for, my entire life. It's hard to actually find people who have visited Iran and, know what it was like before the supreme leader came into power. When I saw an episode of 60 Minutes one time. And this was, I think it was after I read the book or after I wrote the book, excuse me. And they actually had, camera crew go inside and, all the Iranians that were there were, so amazed that, an American, journalist was in there. They were like, "Oh, you're an American? Oh my God, you better go hide." So I mean, yeah, but I mean, no one knows, how it works, how the economy works, what it looks like, how does it, what's it like to cross the street there?
Yeah.
So many simple things that, we take for granted are so much more different over there. And I think that, because, Iran and the West have been at such odds, a lot of the Iranian culture, has been lost. And for those that, aren't the jihadists, um, it is a very, loving, I think, a very loving culture. I mean, I went to one of the protests here in Charlotte, in Uptown Charlotte, one time, just to kind of see what was going on. And I met a bunch of people that came in from Tehran, over the last 4 or 5 years. So it was I think the subject matter just hit me at the right time in terms of why I got interested in it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I don't think a lot of people understand what the nation of Iran as a whole
Right,
is like.
right.
It's interesting because I have Persian friends who
Hmm.
left shortly after the revolution,
Hmm.
and then Persian friends who have come since. So
Hmm.
it after uh, the IRGC
Hmm.
took over.
Sure.
And aside from that, one of the things that I think people see about Iran is they see the IRGC, they see the
Right,
Ayatollah,
right,
they see the death to America,
right,
and they don't realize that most of the country or the majority of the country is actually not Shia fundamentalist.
right. Yeah.
That there are substantial Armenian minorities, there are
Hmm.
substantial Azeri minorities, there are substantial Kurdish minorities, and that in fact the IRGC as a ruling entity controls these people's lives.
Absolutely correct. Yeah. And they've gained more power, over the years.
Yes, and that of course before the IRGC took over, Iran was I mean, it was you would describe it as looking like Lebanon before uh, the influence
Right.
of fundamentalist Islam
Yeah.
or even Greece.
Sure.
Very
Yeah.
modern state,
Right.
um, wealthy, urbanized, and of course that all came apart during the revolution.
Right.
You want to talk a little bit about that because you, of course, put it in the books.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you talk about Iran, what it was and what it now is, I mean, it's total day and night. And that's really what, you know, kind of, caught my eye is I didn't do so much research on what it was. My
Hmm.
research was more concentrated on what it is. I think what it was is probably for those that were there before. I would be more interested in hearing their story. I was more interested in what it is now, simply
Hmm.
because I mean that's the Iran that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
And when I did my research on the economy there, which basically runs on you know the underground economy, things that they're not supposed to have, liquor and weed and things like that. I mean that's really what the supreme leader's economy is all about. I mean obviously bread and grain and fruits and general things of that nature will never go away. But it's always just kind of funny how uh, things like beer and liquor are not allowed, but they turn a blind eye as to how it helps the keep the economy going and keep the people happy when they're not looking.
Yeah.
So I mean that was really where my interest was. I mean it would be interesting if I ever decided to go back and do another book on Iran. I think I would do something about what it was before, and probably do what the Shah's relationship with the West was with the British, or something like that. So that's something that would be of interest to me. But um, because Vince Flynn and Brad Thor were such big influences, I wanted to try and make it as part of today's geopolitical climate as much as I could.
Yeah. So you would say that Vince Flynn and Brad Thor are your big influences?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, him and those two and Joel Rosenberg. When Joel Rosenberg did his his Tehran series. That one was a big one. But Vince Flynn, I've got a funny story about Vince Flynn. Unfortunately I never got to meet him. He came to I
Mhm.
think Raleigh, North Carolina, one time, and I think it was right before he got his cancer diagnosis, or right around the time he got it. I was like, I'll get him on the next round, and it just never happened. But I was looking for a new book to read, and I was talking to a guy that I've never seen before and never seen again on the elevator at work. And they said, give Vince Flynn a try. And I was hooked from, book one. I can't remember which one it was that I picked up. I think it was Protect and Defend. No, Active Treason. It was Active Treason that I picked up. And just the way he wrote, I mean, nailed it right away.
So what would you say makes Vince Flynn just an effective and inspiring author from a thriller point of view, and from what about him piques your interest as a reader?
I
Because I'm always looking for books. My uncle reads nothing but Tom Clancy and Air Force Times, and
okay.
refuses to read anything else. So I'm always looking for something to expand his thriller palette. So what is it
Yeah.
about Vince Flynn that really inspires and inspired you to write your books?
Yeah, for anybody who hasn't read Vince Flynn, you are really missing out. Vince Flynn. First of all, I think the Mitch Rapp character that he created is the primordial badass in the thriller genre. And what he did so well was he made the villains. He was all about character. Don't get me wrong; his plots were good, but his plots weren't all over the
Mhm.
place. You didn't expect a whole lot of complicated plots. His plots are much less complicated than Brad Thor's. Not that Thor's are complicated, but Thor's were or Flynn's were very linear. I thought, but he made the characters and he made the villains so bad, so hateable between the terrorists and the politicians. He would always say that he had a recipe. He said he had, the terrorist plot, he had his hero, he had the terrorist villain, and then he had the politicians that were the secondary villain. And he made the politicians and the terrorist villains so evil and so he would make you hate them, and you would just be salivating. You would be salivating for Mitch Rapp to just go in there and beat the living crap out of the terrorists and rip the politicians a new one. And then when you finally got there, it was kind of like this, literary orgasm that happened. You were like, yes, give it to him. Like, yes, yes, yes. And it never failed every single time. There's only, a couple of his novels that I think are, weren't as good as some of the other ones, but nine times out of ten, he knocked it out of the park. And it's why, I was always, I didn't even wait, for Amazon Prime to send it to me 2 days after. I was at the bookstore the day it came out to always get it. I didn't care if I had to pay the shelving price or not.
Yeah, so to that extent, reminds me, it's funny that that sort of code of the the agent who is both in adversary to the corrupt government
Mm.
and the enemy is it's Rambo 2.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
oh
it's
yeah,
Rambo 2.
oh for
Uh,
sure.
it's an interesting formula. Uh,
Yeah,
I've never read any Vince Flynn, but I'm gonna have to read it.
you
W-
have to. You have to. Yeah, you have to.
Do you think he was pointing? Well, he was clearly pointing to an underlying purity of the man in the moral man in society. Is that what you would say?
Um,
What is the underlying message there, other than that politicians are lousy and that we should not countenance terrorism?
Yeah, I think, one of the reasons that, Flynn became as successful as he was is, I mean, his books came on at the right time. It was right
Yeah.
around 9/11, and, that was really the golden age of the the political spy thriller.
Hmm.
So, I mean, they hit at the right time, number one. But number two, as, we kind of got out of, you know, terrorism, attacking us. Not that it's not a thing now, but as the politics, took over after, what was the prison incident that they had
Abu Ghraib.
after Abu Ghraib and things like that around 2006, 2007, things like that. He really struck a chord with people that were just sick and tired of the politicians who only thought they knew how. They like to tell people that they knew how to protect the country, but didn't have an idea of how to do it. And I
Hmm.
think what really made him, his character, especially so popular, is that you know, we're not putting up with any of that shit.
Hmm.
We're gonna bust some heads, and we're gonna, put people in their place, and we're gonna do what we have to do. And we're not gonna mess around with any political, red tape or BS. It was. I mean, every single time. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me how good he was. I mean, I think at one point I got the first appearance of Mitch Rapp came in Transfer of Power, and it was about terrorist takeover of the White House long before White House Down ever came out.
Yeah.
Um, which he knows that Hollywood ripped him off for that, and he never saw any royalties. But anyway, I got it for free on BookBub at one point, and I had already read it at least two times. But once I put it on my phone, when I was standing in line or waiting in an airport or whatever, it's just so easy to just keep flipping that page.
Yeah. You also mentioned Brad Thor. I've never
Oh
read any
yeah.
Brad Thor, but
Oh
Brad
man,
Thor apparently is a juggernaut
he
of the
is.
dad lit military
Yeah.
thriller.
Oh, for
What
sure.
what would you say defines Brad Thor and makes Brad Thor so successful and so inspiring
Yeah.
as a thriller author?
Yeah, I've had the privilege of meeting Brad Thor a couple of times. The last time I met him, I was at BoucherCon, which is the conference for thriller authors and fans of the thriller genre. And I told him that I considered him to be the heavyweight champion of the spy thriller genre, and I actually gave him a wrestling belt. For him to see, and there's a really good TikTok video of it out there, and it's also on my Instagram page from a couple years ago. But I think what makes him so good is he falls into the same category as Vince Flynn. He has a no nonsense character named Scott Harvath, and but I think what really endears him to the genre is because he does a lot of really good research that I don't think takes him a ton of time, but he always has that imagination that always comes really close to, what happens in real life. And the one that I can think of right off the top of my head was a book called The First Commandment, and it was essentially thou shall not negotiate with terrorists. And it was about, a deal that went wrong, or a deal, I guess I should not a deal that went wrong, but what people would consider to be a bad deal to try and release five terrorists from prison in exchange for one American prisoner or something like that. And that
Well,
really ended up.
that's the Bo Bergdahl
Yeah,
situation.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened. And so, I mean, he predicted it first, and he's been on point a couple other times after that. So he's really on the cutting edge. He has a really good vision for seeing the spy genre and the geopolitical climate, and he really stays on top of things.
Hmm. That's interesting. What would you say are your top five Vince Flynn books? So if someone wants to go and have the choice prime rib of Vince Flynn,
Oh,
what are the five books?
well, I think you got to start with American Assassin. That was technically the birth of Mitch Rapp, although he wrote it later in life.
Hmm.
In his writing career, he wrote older rap first, and then went back and did um, his prequel series. So American Assassin is on the list. I would say the third option. That's one that I really enjoyed. Transfer
Hmm.
of Power, which was the White House takeover. Um, I got them up here on my shelf. I'm looking at them now. Um, I would say probably. I think. the 1-2 combo to me of protect and defend and extreme measures. Protect and defend is really where the he finally touches on Iran, finally, and they capture his friend who is the director of the CIA, Dr. Kennedy. And then his follow up to that was extreme measures, because that's where you get into, when he wrote the book, he said, the CIA officers that he interviewed said, he asked them, what are you afraid of? He's like, I'm afraid that, I'm going to be out there cracking heads and, giving these, terrorists what do they call them? The enhanced interrogation techniques. And then I'm going to have the FBI waiting for me as I get off the plane. They're going to arrest me. So it really kind of tackles, the battle of what the CIA had to do overseas versus, what was going on internally in the United States at the time. So those are probably my top five, but I don't think there's one where you can go wrong. The guys that have taken over the series since he died, Kyle Mills did a good job, and Don Bentley has since taken over the series, and those guys did a good job, but you can't beat the OG.
Yeah. What give me the five Brad Thor winners.
Oh, ooh, that's tough. The the first commandment that I mentioned is probably my favorite. You got to go with the original, which was the Lions of Lucerne. Um, I think you got to go with. He got a lot of praise out of Blowback. I thought that was pretty good, but I really enjoyed Spy Master. I think the most, because it deals with the guy that helped train Scott Harvath, and that character was had a lot of Cold War knowledge to him. So you get to kind of see the mental game that character played in recruiting characters. And one of the ones that I don't think he gets a lot of credit for was his second novel, which was Path of the Assassin. And I asked him about it when I saw him. And he was like, he was always really proud of that book, because when he wrote Lions of Lucerne, which is the first one, which was still very, very good, you never know what's going to happen after you write your first novel. You
Yeah.
always, if it does well, you have to follow it up with another big
With
hit.
another one. That's the
Yeah,
rumor.
yeah,
That's the rumor.
and
Yeah.
when you go back and read it now, and you look at some of the technology that he wrote about at the time, it it's we don't think about it twice now, but for its time, it was very cutting edge. So, and
Hmm.
again, it just goes to show you how close he has his finger on the pulse of what's going on in the world.
Yeah. What makes a successful? I suppose we could call these military spy and techno thrillers, right?
Well,
But they,
I think with a military thriller, I think you really have to have someone that is, to me, is either is military or is ex-military. To
yeah.
me, for it to be a spy thriller, you have to have someone that's actually involved one way or another in the spy business of doing undercover
Hmm.
operations, and working hand in hand with the CIA, or someone within even the foreign spy governments, whether it be Mossad or
Hmm.
whatever. But what makes a successful one? I think, to me, it's the characters. I think that if you have a good character, everybody wants to. You mentioned Rambo too. Rambo never dies. Okay, he will. Long after Sylvester Stallone is retired from the character, the character will live on in our minds. And books
Well,
about.
I don't want to ruin it for you, but he does die.
Well, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean,
In
but
the final installment, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, you never know. I mean, he's sitting on his
Last
rocking
Blood.
chair. Yeah, in Last Blood,
Yes.
he's sitting on the rocking chair. I never really saw him expire, but I mean, he was in his 70s at that point, and he'd gone through enough. So, he was bleeding out pretty good.
Yes.
But I mean, the point is, the character, is such a badass, and it's just beats the hell out of everybody. I just don't think a character like that, no one wants to see a character like that go away. So for me, it's
Mm,
characters, and in order to have a good hero, you have to have a good villain.
yeah.
Plot is obviously essential, but if you have a great villain and a hero that finds a way to you know jump the roadblocks to save the day from that villain, I think you're going to be a success.
Hmm. And so when you construct a villain, how do you go about it?
Mm. I always look at what their motivation is,
Yep.
because the best villains in the world are always going to find their own way to justify what they're doing. Um, and you know, you know, I don't want to put any praise on Hitler or anything like that. But in his mind, in his mind,
Don't
his
worry.
crazy
That
mind,
would,
he
yes.
thought he was doing something good. I mean, and everybody knows it was bad. Okay,
Yes.
everybody knows it was bad. But for whatever reason, his psychotic mind, he thought he was doing the right thing. And the best villains will always have something like that. And when I wrote Surviving the Lion's Den, my villain, Raheem Shirazi, the head of the IRGC, he wanted to find a way to rebuild the Persian Empire.
Hmm.
And in his mind, that was he was going to do whatever he had to do to piece by piece do that. So if you can establish what they want, and then go about looking at the ways that they want to do that, and then you can bring in your main character, your protagonist, and that can navigate his way through the all those landmines.
Hmm. So you've now written three books
Yep.
on espionage and
Hmm.
Iran.
Hmm.
What is the linchpin? What is everyone missing? I think at this point, so for reference, the
Okay.
the Dadlit Pod episode that we're doing now is being
Hmm.
recorded on January 6, 2026.
Hmm.
There is widespread uh, popular revolt on the part of middle class merchants going
Hmm.
on throughout Iran,
Right. Yeah.
to likely include students who are not uh, uh, religious students,
Hmm.
and to likely include Kurds,
Yep.
and we are witnessing those at the end of what has been a very intensive campaign
Hmm.
of economic sanction.
Yep.
Iran is forced to sell its oil, which is its primary export,
Yep.
at below market value,
Yep.
mostly to the Chinese government and
Hmm.
mostly to the Chinese and the
Yeah.
Indians.
Hmm.
And in addition to that, they've been denied technology, airplane
Hmm.
technology,
Yep.
any sort of chip manufacturer from
Yep.
originating from the United States.
Yep.
And finally, a few months back, the United States launched a B-2 attack that did pretty catastrophic damage to a mountain where they were keeping an important aspect of their nuclear program. And this
Yes.
was following the Israeli campaign, which wiped out most of their air defenses,
Right.
much of their leadership,
Yep.
and a number of nuclear scientists, and
Hmm.
did quite a bit of damage to their foreign mercenary force. Basically, I think
Yep.
I was looking, they pay every Hezbollah fighter receives $1,800 a month or the equivalent from the IRGC.
Hmm.
And they are obviously not in Iran, they're in southern Lebanon and
Hmm.
Syria.
Yep.
And they've also been funding Shia militias in Iraq,
Yep.
which were responsible for all sorts of problems during the United States attempt to stabilize that country.
Hmm.
And they are kidnapping and assassinating people throughout the Middle East. And they've extended this to Europe, where
Oh yeah.
they are funding gangs in Sweden and trying to kidnap and assassinate people throughout Europe.
Yeah, they're the number one sponsor of state terrorism for a reason.
Yes. Well, this does it. I forgot. The Houthis, in addition,
Oh yeah.
are also
Yeah.
supplied militarily by Iran, a
Yeah.
country which is experiencing catastrophic inflation right now,
Correct.
and whose internal military force is almost exclusively centered around controlling domestic populations and launching rockets, offensive, what I wouldn't call them dumb rockets. They're just not very smart rockets, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
They're
Yeah. Yeah.
they're
Good point.
they're very large. Um, they can program them to land around where they want them to land,
Hmm.
and they're almost exclusively currently aimed at American bases in Qatar, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, and obviously Israel as well.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, after that big mouthful, with these mass protests and with
Hmm.
them on the ropes,
Hmm.
and me and my Persian friends exchange text messages about this constantly.
Hmm.
What's it going to take for the IRGC to finally give up power and depart from Iran? By the way, this is not even counting the fact that the IRGC is a giant criminal organization
Right.
that pockets all the money and uses it to send their kids to foreign schools
Yeah.
and buy foreign homes
Hmm.
and all manner of criminal enterprise, which
Oh
is
yeah.
basically was theft,
Yeah. It's
just
it's
theft.
it's a gang as much as anything else.
Yes,
What's it gonna take? Um,
because
yeah, I
because
think
it's on everybody's mind right now.
yeah, and I think I know this is going to be kind of a boring answer, but I mean, my answer is that they need to keep doing what they're doing right now, because
Oh, you mean the protesters on the
yeah, the
ground?
protests and just keep doing it because the more numbers they accumulate, the more people that join in, the more the IRGC will disband. And what we're seeing right now is, a lot of the IRGC soldiers, regardless of what division they're in, are starting to do what the Nazis did at the end of the World War II, is trying to take cover as regular civilians and things like that, and it's
Mhm.
it's it's not going to work. So they have to keep the pressure on, because as soon as they let up on it and they decide they're tired of it, they're not getting anywhere. That's when the IRGC stronghold is going to come back, and the supreme leader is really going to start cracking down. So I mean, they need to do what is working well for them so far, is and not let up. I would, this is not a. I look at this as not a political opinion, but a geopolitical one. When during the I think it was the Obama administration, when he gave them, I think it was what, $250 million, in exchange, to release some of their funds, and in order to, gain a better relationship with them. That was big money, for them. And I think if he had kept his foot on the throat, the economic sanctions, um, we might have seen something like this earlier. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. There's no way to prove that conclusively. Um, but in the end, the economic sanctions, as far as what I'm seeing from a protest standpoint, is working. I'm just surprised it took it as long as it has to get to this point. You've seen some sporadic protests here and there, but nothing on the scale of what I'm seeing right now. So I think if they keep it up, they can do the same thing that what happened with Gaddafi. I don't know that the supreme leader is going to let it get to that point, but the guy's in his, I think he's 78. I can't remember how old he is, but and he's in bad health. So moving
Yeah.
around is not going to do well for him. So it's going to depend on who does he have around him to protect him, and what is the IRGC willing to do, because they're the ones that've got the guns. They've got the artillery, and is he going to start using chemical weapons on his own people to span the protests? It's possible. It's a good question. Obviously, I hope not. That's what Saddam did to the Kurdish rebels in the late 80s. No one wants to see that happen, but desperate men do desperate things. And I think it's very telling to me so far that we have seen such a lack of response from Ayatollah Khomeini. Um,
Well,
you know,
he is hiding.
well, yeah, no. He's hiding,
Yeah.
but he's still in power. Is my point.
Yes.
He has the ability to command the IRGC to do whatever he deems necessary. And given the protests, I would have thought you would have seen more IRGC firepower, or tanks, or something of that nature being utilized. And the lack of response makes them look much weaker than I think they are. But there's strength in numbers, and I think when you see the amount of protests that are going on, um, I think as crazy as it sounds, it might hit them in the heart a little bit. You never know, but um, I would want to keep an eye on what the supreme leader has in store, because at some point he's gonna get desperate, and when that happens, he's either going to get captured or he's going to do something really crazy. And we may not have the mainstream media coverage in Iran that we have here, but Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it has done a very good job of covering it, in terms of the protesters posting videos and things of that nature, which really isn't easy for them to do, but they found a way around all of the technological firewalls. I did write about in the Ayatollah takedown. So I think as long as that they keep that visibility and that awareness going, I think there's a good chance that the protests are going to succeed. But they got to keep up the power. They got to keep moving. They got to keep gathering more people, and hopefully in the coming weeks something good will happen. Never know.
Yeah, the Dad Lit Pod is officially on the side of the Iranian people, and my sincere hope is that they are able to, and I'm with them as they push through. I'm going to make cutlet tomorrow.
Yes.
I'm going to make I've looked up a recipe and make a delicious cutlet. I think
I tell
it's
you what, as you mentioned that was one of the funnest things I wrote about in the three novels was Persian food, because I didn't think you could write you can't write about a culture that you don't know about without talking about the kind of food that they make.
Yeah, so what is your favorite Persian dish?
Um, there was one that they make that it's with rice. Well, number one, they have some of the greatest bread in the world. I wish I
Mhm.
could find a way to find good Persian bread, but I'm not going to find it here in Southeast North Carolina.
Yeah.
Uh, but there was one that I wrote about in Lion's Den, that took the rice and it kind of they scraped it all. I can't remember what they called it. I really feel bad that I can't remember the name of. But they cooked it for a long time, and they scraped it at the bottom of the pan. It was almost like hard popcorn, but it had absorbed so much
It's
flavor of
it's
the. Go ahead.
tadig. It's
Yeah, that's it.
tadig.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah, sorry.
It gets
Apologies for your listeners for forgetting that, but I knew what I was talking about.
yeah, no, I had to look it up too because I couldn't remember, and it's made with saffron.
That's right. Yeah.
So basically the pan itself is sort of a pool of delicious
Hmm.
oil and saffron,
Right. Yeah.
and the cooked rice at this point is then sort of twice baked with the saffron oil. It produces
Right.
a really delicious rice,
It does. Yeah.
and it's very good. And of course, cutlet is like a potato latke but with hamburger. Is how I view it.
Hmm. Interesting.
It's a you basically ground potato, you ground onion, you add in some cumin, salt, pepper, and then hamburger,
Hmm.
and then you fry it in a pan. And cutlet is rather hilariously known for Cutlet Day. So believe it was, let me look it up and make sure. The second, January 2nd, is what's called Cutlet Day in
Huh.
the Persian diaspora and amongst anti-IRGC characters. You know what Cutlet Day refers to?
Uh-uh. No.
So when Donald Trump blew up Soleimani, who is the head
Yeah.
of the IRGC's foreign
Uh-huh.
mercenary force in Iraq,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
the joke amongst Persians was that all that his remains looked like a charred cutlet.
I hadn't heard that.
Yes,
I
yes.
hadn't
So
heard that.
that is
Interesting.
that is Cutlet Day,
Interesting.
and rather hilariously, I think it was um, the sixth anniversary of Cutlet Day is
Uh-huh.
the night before he launched the capture of Maduro
I
in
believe that's right.
Venezuela,
I think that's correct.
and
Yeah.
there seems to be a pattern whereby um, right after the new year, Donald Trump either blows up a foreign terrorist or now captures Maduro.
Yeah. He's got
But
a good
yes,
track record in January. Yeah.
yeah, he's got yes his January military action track record
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
is very good.
Yeah, we're getting ready to
So
have like a January terrorist bingo of some kind.
yes, the Uh, things seem to be getting pretty hot in the Middle East. What is your next topic that you think you're going to explore?
Uh, well, I can't say too much about it because I've been sworn to secrecy, but let me tell you this. I am working on a fourth book. It is not based in the Middle East. It is based
Oh.
in the United States. So it's a little bit of a departure for me. Not because I was uninterested in the Middle East. It just so
Hmm.
happened that the idea I had is just something that I went with, and I think is working quite well for me. So
Hmm.
it is based in the United States, but as far as hot button issues in the Middle East, besides what's going on in Iran right now, I am actually more interested in excuse me, I'm more interested in seeing what Russia and China's interests are in the Middle East and what they are taking from there. Because you
Hmm.
mentioned something, earlier, that the way Iran is selling their oil to China at, bargain basement prices. And that's something that I actually touched on a little bit in the Ayatollah Takedown, not quite to that extent, because my novel was essentially that. I mean, I try to be as close to the geopolitical climate as I can, but I want to add a little bit of
Hmm.
a creative spin to it. But anyway, um, those are China and Russia are the vultures right now. Not that they haven't always been, but I mean, they're the kind of countries that, take advantage of bad situations that, can suit them. They're kind of like, if you remember the Robert Pattinson Batman movie, you see Penguin at the end of the movie looking over the carnage of the city. He doesn't see carnage, he sees opportunity. And
Yeah.
that's the way China and Vladimir Putin look at it. And Joel Rosenberg, in his Last Jihad series, he really touches on that really well.
Hmm. So tell me about Joel Rosenberg. I've never heard of him. What
Oh,
are
you never heard of?
his?
Oh,
Yeah.
and Joel Rosenberg. He did his, between him and Jack Carr, I think, are really at the top of their game right now. But
Hmm.
Rosenberg started off. He actually predicted 9/11 before it happened. His book had gone to the editor. The Last Jihad had gone to the editor when 9/11 happened. So they actually had to adapt the novel a little bit afterwards. But he's got a couple of different series. The first one is the Last Jihad series, and it really deals with terrorism and how it leads to how it relates to everything that's in the Bible. And if you have not read, I'll make sure I get the name of the book right. Um, if you have not read the Ezekiel option is probably the best thriller I have ever read. I literally could not put it down, and it has to do with the war of it references the war of Gog and Magog that's in the Bible. And it's a 5 book series, and he concludes it masterfully. There's even one section where they find I think it's in the is it in the copper I think it's in the copper scroll, that they find the Ark of the Covenant. So that there's always those little religious artifacts that are kind of Easter egged in there a little bit. Um, he did his story on Tehran, which was the 12th Imam series. He did one that has a New York Times reporter, and his book, The Persian Gamble, I think it was a JB. His character's name was JB Collins, and that's the one where he writes about Iran using the 250 billion that they got from the U.S. To try and buy nuclear weapons from North Korea. So he actually wrote a book on that. He's got a series right now, and I can't off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of the character, but it's still all based in the Middle East.
Hmm.
So he was known as the Nostradamus of the Middle East, or the political thriller for a while, because he predicted 9/11. I think in his next book, which I think was The Last Days, he predicted the death of Arafat. So that's kind of how he got his name made. But yeah, Joel C. Rosenberg. Anybody who hasn't read him, definitely start with. You can start with the Last Jihad. That was actually the first book. But if you jump right in and read the Ezekiel option from the start, you're not going to be sorry. It is
Hmm.
it is that good.
Hmm. The what area do you think is missing that if someone wanted to explore a thriller or explore writing a thriller today, what's a geopolitical area that would be a cool area that people have not tackled?
It's hard to find one that people haven't tackled. I think it's more about what other authors haven't tackled enough. And
Hmm.
uh, to me, that answer is China.
Hmm.
I think there needs to be more novels about the U.S. struggle with China, because we owe so much money to them. They've basically become our banker in
Hmm.
a certain way, and they've started to use that debt as influence. I think one of the things that they tried to do. We I think Sony borrowed some money from them, and they wanted them to take the Statue of Liberty out of one of the Spider-Man movies. And finally, surprisingly, the Hollywood producers told them to go pound sand.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean that kind of shows the way they look at uh, people who owe them money, and how they use that influence. Um, I think one of the things that needs to be tackled too is, people need to start looking back at Saudi Arabia again,
Hmm.
because not so much from a spy thriller genre, but if you look at the way they're trying to use their money to influence, the world, they had all
Well,
the
I mean,
money.
they just blew up some military equipment that the UAE dropped in South Yemen.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. But what
So
I'm saying is,
they're certainly going. This is ultimately a thing is at the when the reality becomes more bizarre than the fiction.
yeah, yeah, and I think what I'm getting at though is, they're using their money to buy, influence in the world. They want to have this big gigantic soccer stadium that's, on top of a building, 50 stories in the air or something like that. They've gotten, and this is not me just being a wrestling nerd. They have got an extreme amount of influence with, professional wrestling and with
Oh
the
yeah, that's
with the
fascinating.
WWE. It's yeah, I
Yeah,
mean they're getting ready to have. I think they're going to have the Royal Rumble in Riyadh, and I think they're probably going to have WrestleMania there,
yep,
and then they have the Live Golf League. So they're
yep.
using their money to buy influence around the world, and it's to help shield them from a lot of their human rights violations. So,
Mhm.
there's a story there that I don't think has been written yet. But I think when you talk about the standard, spy, or the traditional, I guess I should say, spy thriller genre, I would go with China, and then you've always got Russia because Vladimir Putin's just, I mean, he's
Oh,
so
he's a nut. He's
he's so
completely nuts.
but he's so smart. I mean, he plays chess, but political chess better than anybody, and
Mhm.
he always sees six moves out. So it's one. The books can be written, and there have been others that have been written that kind of more or less center around him without, obviously specifically naming him. Um,
Mhm.
but the thing about Russia is that, we had the Cold War for so long. We had so many Cold War novels. Russia's you got to have a really good plot to make a Russian
A
novel really,
fresh Russian
yeah,
novel.
make it yeah, seem very fresh for readers to want to be interested in.
Mhm. So, do you want to pitch your three books, your Tehran or your IRGC series, and then we'll
Yeah,
close it
absolutely.
out?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, the first novel, The Surviving the Lion's Den, was my debut. It was really a two-pronged story. One is about a CIA agent that gets captured in Riyadh and gets tortured by the IRGC. The other one is about um, an Iranian. He's American, but he has Iran uh, roots, and the IRGC bumps off his grandfather, who was only his only living relative, and he goes back. He goes over there for revenge, and I can't give away too much, but the two stories end up colliding. And then you got the political villain, Vivian Walsh, who is trying to use her influence to uh, uh, close one of the bases in the Middle East that's home to I think, the Sixth Fleet. Um, so you got that going on. The second book, the Iranian Deception, was a little bit it was a little bit different. It was probably the tougher book that I wrote, but it's probably the most action packed because the I did take a couple of the characters from Surviving the Lion's Den, but my main character in Lion's Den, who was Kirk Carruthers, he's in it. But I decided to switch gears a little bit, and I introduced a character that was in Lion's Den but didn't play that big of a role, and I made Ben Thrasher my main character. So in that book, it's about there's a connection between the Iranians and the Nazis, and in a plot to try and keep um, the new supreme leader in power, and take over the Middle East with a Middle East version of essentially NATO. and Ben Thrasher kind of has to save the day. So you're going to see a lot of the same characters that you saw from Lion's Den, but Ben Thrasher kind of takes over. But I still have the kidnapped, CIA agent Tom DeLange, and some of the other ones like Beth Jenkins in there. And then you have the Ayatollah takedown, which is about regime change in Iran. Again, Ben Thrasher is the main character. It is a very, I will say, a very creative take on, what I think regime change can look like. There are a lot of similarities to what you see going on today.
Mhm.
But I did take I had to take a bit of creative license a little bit, just because as much as it would be nice to have a novel that plays out exactly how what's going on right now, it wouldn't be a whole lot of fun to write, I think. So I had to come up with something new, and there is a chapter or two in there that I think will turn reader, really make readers tune in and turn the pages very swiftly to see what happens and why it happens. But eventually, it is about regime change.
Well, great. Well, this is Matt Scott. Go check out his 3 books, all relevant, and have a thrilling experience and learn about Iran.
Thanks, everyone. You can
Thank you,
reach me.
Matt.
Yeah, you can reach me at Matt Scott Books on Instagram and Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. This has been another episode of the Dadlet Pod.
Our time together has come to an end. It's time to return to your wife, kids, and friends. It's time to pick up those books you forgot while you wait for the next Dadlit Pod.